Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to Jeep Tracks. I'm Tim Hansen. Hey, this is part 3 of our winter series, and this week we're going to take a winter adventure. We're going to head to El Dorado Canyon, with our final destination being the Moffat Tunnel. We're going to make some historic stops along the way I think you're really going to enjoy. Now, this trip turned out to be a little colder than I was expecting on New Year's Day, and by the time we got to Moffat Tunnel, well, we were in a full-fledged blizzard. We started off on Highway 93, going north out of Golden, and headed towards Boulder. We turned west on Highway 72 toward Rollinsville. Now, this is known as El Dorado Canyon. There's quite a few switchbacks, some steep grades, but it's a fun road to drive on, and it's rich with history. Now, the drive itself in the summertime, don't need four-wheel drive. I highly recommend it in the wintertime, okay? And you want to stay on the main road. Now, if you plan to go off of the main road, depending on where you go, I highly recommend four-wheel drive. And on most of the trails, you're going to want some off-road experience, which is probably a good idea. The first actual town we're going to go through is Pinecliffe. Now, it's about 17 miles west of Highway 93 on Highway 72. Pinecliffe was originally called Gatto and was established as a railroad camp and for the building of the Moffat Road somewhere around 1903. Gatto was established at the point along the rail line where the grade and the stream meet. Now, prior to the establishment of Gatto, placer mining claims were worked in the area, and mountain farming was taking place. According to the research, a post office was built in 1909, and then the town was officially called Pinecliffe. A train schedule from 1909 for the Denver, Northwest, and Pacific lists the town as Pinecliffe, 2 words. In 1913, the town was subdivided off and platted for residential and commercial building by Guy C. Knox. Because of the topography of the area, many of the lots were inaccessible. However, cabins began to spring up in the area. The population continued to grow, and by 1915, the Colorado Business Directory listed a candy maker and a grocery store serving the community. It is also speculated that prostitution may have been another enterprise that served the miners, lumbermen, and construction crews. However, that's never been proven, and there seems to be no historical records to back that up. Today, Pinecliffe has no recorded population. However, there are a few remaining residents and a few businesses. Okay, our next stop is going to be Winks Lodge. It was officially named Winks Panorama. However, it is commonly known as Winks Lodge. It's still standing and it's in wonderful condition. Just west of Pinecliffe, about 2 miles, look for South Beaver Creek Road. Now, you want to take a left here. Now, this is located in what is known as the Lincoln Hills District. Now, the Lincoln Hills area was established in 1922 by 2 Denver businessmen, E.C. Rainier and Roger Ewald. To get there, turn south on South Beaver Creek Road, follow it to Winks Way. You'll see a sign, it's a street sign, Winks Way, which will be on your left. Now, it's a public road. You're going to see this structure, which was once a bar, has an old sign on it. Go up past it, staying to the right, and then a few hundred feet on up, you're going to find Winks Lodge. Now, in the early 1920s, Denver entrepreneur Aubrey Wendell Hamlet, also known as Winks, began building the first resort and country club for African Americans west of the Mississippi. Nestled in the woods next to the South Boulder Creek, Winks and his second wife Naomi began construction on the 3-story, 6-bedroom lodge in 1925 and officially opened it in 1928. Now, across from this lodge is this little cabin. I want to show you a picture of this. It's a little cabin, and a local there said, well, that was the honeymoon suite. And he says it was a pretty exciting place back in its day. This is a significant historical and cultural site for all Americans. As the migration of former slaves from the South slowly pushed north and west, Colorado became a key part in the history of desegregation. People came to Lincoln Hills by car and train to visit and enjoy the wilderness, the outdoor recreation, and the serenity for what seemed to them like 1,000 miles from the bustle of the city, and where racism and segregation were still normal. It was also listed in the now famous Green Book, a travel guide for African Americans. To this day, many African American families still have cabins in the area, and Winks Lodge is still used for such cultural events. And I can say that visiting this place gave me a deep appreciation for the accomplishments and successes of early African American entrepreneurs in Colorado. It was also visited by the greats like Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Lena Horne, Billy Eckstein. And you're going to find out more about this beautiful place if you go to LincolnHillCares.org. Putting that up here on the screen for you. LincolnHillCares.org. Now we're going to head to Rollinsville by getting back onto Highway 72 and going west. Now, Rollinsville started as a stage stop in 1868. The town's post office was established just 4 years later in 1872. Credit for establishing the town goes to John Q.A. Rollins, for which he named the town. Now, Rollins was an investor, he was a businessman. He was born in Moultonborough, New Hampshire in 1816. He began as an entrepreneur, get this, at the age of 12. By the age of 18, he was successful in milling, farming, and mercantile pursuits. Now, he went to Chicago. Actually, he went to Detroit first. He walked to Chicago. That's another story. And he made his fortune in real estate. And upon the Pikes Peak Gold Rush in 1860, he assembled 30 teams and came to Colorado. He had an interest and an investment in many of the mining operations in Gilpin County. He set up a quartz mill in the winter of 1860. He was one of the first road builders in Colorado, having built the Rollins Pass Road, which was a toll road that connected Rollinsville over the Snowy Range and into Hot Sulphur Springs in Middle Park. He then built a bridge over the Grand River. The road was 40 miles long, and it cost John Rollins a whopping $20,000. At one time, he was also half owner of the toll road that connected Denver to Golden, from Golden to Blackhawk and Central City. Now, Rollins made a fortune in his mining, road building, milling, and other investments in Gilpin County. Today, Rollinsville is still an active community on the Peak to Peak Highway, also known as Highway 119, and there are still about 200 residents living there. Now, if you're an off-road enthusiast like me, you'll find plenty of trails of varying degrees around this area. There is some amazing scenery, and in the summer, we're going to take you to some of these trails and tell you more about them. We're going to leave Rollinsville by way of Road 16, which goes directly west. Now, this is a dirt road, however, it is well maintained. A few miles on Road 16, you're going to come to the town of Tolland. Now, Tolland started as a mining town and a stage stop. When the construction for the Moffat Road over Rollins, also known as Corona Pass at that time, and later the Moffat Tunnel, it became a railroad station serving the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad. Originally, the town was called Mammoth, named after the Mammoth Gulch that ran north out of there. Charles Hanson Toll bought the land in 1883 for $1,000. He died in 1901 and leaving the land to his wife, Catherine. She saw an opportunity when the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad came through in 1904, and she platted the land and sold it off in parcels. She officially named the town Tolland in 1904 after her hometown in England, also called Tolland. Now, Tolland made news a few times. In 1907, a 13-year-old girl was kidnapped in Grand Junction, and a year later she was located in Tolland with another family. On January 29th of 1919, a boiler exploded on engine number 100, and that killed 2 railroad workers, and then 2 months later, a murder-suicide took place between 2 friends at the train station at Tolland. It started over a bucket of water. Shorty Allen killed his friend James Carton with an axe and then shot himself in the head with a .22 caliber rifle. Today there are still a few residents in Tolland and a few cabins that I'm showing here. I guess there was also a mooning hosted by town residents, most recently 1997, during the Big 8 conference when Bill Clinton was president, and Bill organized a train ride for Hillary and some of the ladies. How residents lined up in lawn chairs in front of Tolland along the tracks, and when the train slowly approached, Hillary was waving, and the residents, well, they all mooned her. She quickly turned away and stopped waving. However, other ladies on the train, I guess, laughed and waved. Well, the snow is flying, and we're going to head on up to our final destination, Moffat Tunnel. We ran into quite a bit of wind, snow, and blinding snow squalls, but other than a few slippery curves, the trip was fairly uneventful. Now, Moffat Tunnel was the idea and dream of Colorado pioneer David Moffat. He had a vision of a tunnel going through the Continental Divide, giving Denver an easy access to the western slope, and also to Salt Lake City in the Pacific Ocean. Now, the Union Pacific Railroad had opted for Cheyenne, Wyoming, and straight across to Salt Lake and all points west. David Moffat was trying endlessly to gain support for the tunnel. Now, each time he thought that he had investors lined up, someone would back out under the advice of the Union Pacific Railroad. The tunnel is 6 miles long, and it was an engineering marvel. As it was, the railroad had to go over Rollins Pass, and it was a treacherous pass with extremely sharp curves and 4% grades and snow removal. Well, that alone made it unprofitable to operate the railroad. David Moffat continued to find investors and to get people excited about his tunnel idea. Well, he died of a heart attack while in New York meeting with potential investors in 1911. In 1920, a bill was introduced to the Colorado State Legislature, and they gave approval to build 3 tunnels. One under Monarch Pass, one under Cumbres Pass, and the Moffat Tunnel through the Continental Divide. Now 2 towns were formed on either side of the tunnel for the construction. The west side was called West Portal, and the east side, which we're visiting today, was called East Portal. These are the buildings that remain in East Portal. Construction workers, they enjoyed housing here, a school, church, and recreation. However, drinking was not allowed as the construction company wanted their workers to have a safe working environment. The Moffat Tunnel was cut under James Peak that you see here. A small pioneer tunnel was first bored parallel with and south of the main tunnel. This was done to make it easier to create the main tunnel. The Pioneer Tunnel was 8 feet wide and 8 feet high. Now the Pioneer Tunnel was finished on February 18th of 1927. The first blast of dynamite for the main tunnel was performed by President Calvin Coolidge by pressing a button in Washington, D.C., and it was broadcast nationwide over the radio. The first train passed through the tunnel in February of 1928. The Pioneer Tunnel was then used to carry water for the Denver water supply. Ironically, today the tunnel is used by Union Pacific Railroad for the routes between Denver and Salt Lake and for the passenger train Amtrak. The original estimate for the construction of the tunnel was around $6.5 million back then. By the time it was completed, the cost with interest totaled over $24 million. During the construction, sadly, 28 workers were killed in accidents, 6 alone in a cave-in on July 30th of 1926. Now this summer we're going to take you to the west portal of Moffat Tunnel, and we're going to tell you how this engineering marvel helped to build that side of the mountain. Okay, so we're cold, the snow is accumulating rather quickly, and we're going to get out of here. Make sure you watch next week. We're going to take you to Central City, Blackhawk, and the ghost towns of that region. I'm sure we're going to find some more interesting stories about the places, the people, and the history of this great state. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you know when the next video is out. Please hit like and subscribe, and you can find this series under Applegate Films on both YouTube and Facebook. Thanks for watching. Get outside.